Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for inviting me and for having me. Eva is 100% right because I'm going to say the exact opposite of what she said. So she knows me very, very well. And when I first got the email of doing this, I was like, oh, what I'm going to talk about in 5 minutes that's actually valuable, what can I communicate? And there's something that I think I do pretty well, and I think other people don't. So I actually wanted to share that with you. All and it's about fundraising. And as you just mentioned, my name is Liran Belenzon. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of a Toronto-based company, well, now pretty much global company called BenchSci. Raised over $130 million over the past 7 years in 7 funding rounds, and we're over 400 people. And over the last 7 years, we basically taught a computer how to understand science like a PhD scientist would. And we then built a platform on top of a knowledge graph that now serves 14 of the top 20 global pharmaceutical companies, from the biggest Japanese, Swiss, Danish, British, and American companies. So instead of basically sharing with you what I know about fundraising, my first ask is to forget everything you know about fundraising, because most of what you know is probably shared by investors, and that perspective is very different from a founder perspective. And when you have investors give you advice, usually they say the following, which is talk to as many people as much as you can, share with them everything about your company. They also say things like build relationships. Relationships are really important before someone invests in you, and they have to get to know you, and so on and so on. And they'll even say things like send them constant updates about your company, add them to a newsletter, and keep them posted about how things are progressing so they can have many, many different data points around your company so they can see how you get started and where you are today. And they can see, oh, wow, this is a wonderful, wonderful team. But the reality is, and I'm talking from experience, unfortunately, this leads to a really, really, really long process where you end up putting all of your resources in talking to investors instead of actually building your company. It actually leads to a bad valuation, and actually is a massive, massive, massive time suck on you. And that is happening because by talking to everyone whenever and showing them insights about your company whenever, you're not really creating any urgency, because why would someone invest if you're just talking to more people and don't have any offers at the same time? Not really creating any competition, because in reality, you might get one term sheet, but not going to get many if you're just talking to people on and on and on and on and on. And you're also not telling the best story. We had candidates here today sharing their perspective on what needs to be done in the city to make it better. I'm sure that's not the first version, but they share the best version in front of us so we can hear the best story so we can vote for them. And with your company is not very, very different. So having done this 7 times and raised over $130 million in Canada, which is not easy, and I moved here 8.5, 9 years ago. I've never done this before. I have no network. I knew pretty much no one. Eva took a meeting with me early on through CDL because I bugged her a lot via email. But this really came from trial and error and from doing this many times to figure out the right way to do it. So how to raise money fast, efficiently, while maximizing the valuation for your company. And the reason I think this is so important is because I hope a lot of people here in the room have really big dreams around companies they're going to build. Hopefully those companies are going to be very disruptive. I'm assuming if they're going to be disruptive, they're also going to cost a lot of money to build, and you're going to have to fundraise money. And in my opinion, that's probably the most important thing that a founder CEO needs to do, making sure you have resources to execute on your vision. So how do you do this? Don't talk to everyone. Pick 20 investors max that you think will be a great fit for your company, and make that list and put it aside. 2, don't build relationships. Don't talk to them before you're actually ready to fundraise. The reality is, and investors can tell you differently, is that they don't need more than 3 weeks to make a decision. That is true for $1 million check, and that's also true for a $100 million check. In 3 weeks, every investor should be able to make a decision whether or not they want to invest in your company. And if they don't make a decision at the end of those 3 weeks, the answer is they do not want to invest in your company, and just going to be a very, very long maybe. It's going to suck all of your resources. Your goal is to get people to a yes or a no, not a very slow maybe that's just going to suck all of your resources as a company. And the third thing is pitch everyone together within 1 week. Why is that so important? Because by doing that, you're creating two things. Urgency, because people know you're talking to other investors. And hopefully you have a really good story that at the end of this process, you'll create competition. Because you have more than one term sheet or an offer that comes out at the end of this. So take a leap of faith, trust me on this, give it a shot, and see what happens. And thank you.
Let's see if we have some questions. And just again, in case people didn't hear it, how much have you raised so far?
$130 million.
So this is a tested and true way to raise.
7 times, yeah. First time I did it wrong, 6 other times I did it right.
Yeah, I think we actually have a live stream recorded where you talk about how everything you did wrong. So if you want to know how you did wrong, we'll put it we'll share it with social media. Jason?
Hi there. So I wanted to ask, you said 1 million to 100 million, but at the really early stage, when you're just ideating, would the same process work, or you still need just the deck and finalized at that point?
I would say even more than later on, because there's really no data. So there's really not a lot of due diligence to do. It's basically much you and the idea that you have and some high-level proof points, but it's much, much faster in the early stages than in the more advanced stages, because if it's more the advanced stages, people can see if your story is correct or not, because you have a product in the market, is traction, you're going to talk to all of your customers, figure what is happening and what is real and what is not. So there's actually more work to be done in a later stage than the early stage.
Hey there. So on your cap table, you have money from US and both Canadian and US VCs.
Yeah.
How's your experience differed raising money cross border?
I would say that I think that at this stage, if you asked me that question 7 years ago, I would give you a different answer. I think today there is no difference. I think the difference is the partner, even more than the fund. At the end of the day, you work with people. You can have an amazing fund and a very shitty partner that you end up working with, and vice versa. A very shitty fund, but an amazing human being on the other side. You'll get higher valuations in the Valley area than even on the East Coast in the States. But you get the best valuation if you run a process like I just shared with you.
Hey, thanks for all that information. That was awesome. What's the best way to find 20 investors that are like a good fit that you would want to pitch to within a week?
At which stage of company? Let's say you're just starting out, or you're
let's say within a fairly fresh, within a year or two, kind of thing.
Right. So,
or would it matter, or is that something that you'd have to consider as well?
For sure. I would, if it was me and I would do this again, I would look, okay, what am I focused on? Which investors out there are interested in this? Specifically, which partners are interested in the space that I'm operating in, and have a thesis on it, basically some sort of perspective on it that aligns with mine. Those are the people you're most likely to win, and you can figure all the stuff on Google or ChatGPT even, who knows.
Sorry, before I get back to Jason, I'm going to ask, is there any resources in particular you use?
Yeah, Google.
Not ChatGPT.
Could you spell the URL for everybody, just so?
But when you get further, A, B, you just ask your investors as well and compile a list together. I have a running list in the past 7 years of people I think might be a good fit for the company. And every time before we fundraise, I circulate that with the entire board and we align on a list. Because a lot of people know things about partners and VCs that are not online. So basically you back channel with your investors, but at a later stage. Early stage, I would just do what I just shared.
We've got 2 more questions.
Hi, Liran. I've actually followed BenchSci from the beginning. Not the beginning, but very early days, and have used your product as well. To people who don't know BenchSci, it's really disruptive in the space. People love it, whoever's used it. My question for you is, how do you find those specific 20 investors? Like, I know somebody asked a question, but in your niche specifically, or in other niches where it's not that popular?
For sure. So I don't. That's the reality. If you look at a space, we operate the intersection of AI, biology, and SaaS. There are no investors in that space. So for me, what was the adjacent to that? It's either tech or biotech. Biotech was a terrible fit. So it was tech, and people with, for example, within tech, we sell to big pharma. So tech enterprise, for example, SaaS. So it's close enough. But that just made it so much harder at the beginning, especially if you're doing something in an unproven market. That just makes it a bit harder. You can do it. It's just you have to go really hard at that. That's the reality.
Last question.
I have 2 very small questions. So I have 2 half questions. Sorry. Okay. So the first one is I have I have a list of some family offices. Some have reached out to me, and what's the difference between dealing with a family office and a big VC? I have another short one after that.
What's the difference? There's a lot of differences, and it depends what you're looking for. If you just want to check and that is it, you can go to a family office. If you're looking for something more, that's a signal to the market, that's expertise, that's help with fundraising afterwards and so on, I would go to an investor, but it just depends on the specific context of your situation, right, and what you're looking for.
Yeah. And another super short question. I'm doing a really small startup, kind of like pitch competition type of thing. Would you like to be a judge?
To be a judge.
You seem pretty cool.
Thank
Pick 20 judges, get your deck ready, and give yourself a week. All right, give them a round of applause.